Good afternoon and welcome to the second session of the Chinese American Film Festival panel discussions. I'm going to ask each one of our guests this time to introduce themselves briefly when you get your chance to answer the first question, okay? And just ask you to try and keep your answers a little shorter so that we have time to move through and get through all of the questions. But, you know, don't worry, we'll keep track of you, and they're keeping track of me. Okay, so with no further ado, I welcome a lot of old friends back, and we will start with the first question, which we've already been through. You heard some ideas. What do you feel is the current status of the Chinese film industry, and what the future holds?
大家好，我是中国的电影导演江平。跟苏远涛 James 先生也是多年的好朋友，其实也是见证了20年中美电影节的发展。昨天我看到，苏远涛先生 从台下走到台上，大概走了20秒，这20秒走了20年。这20年其实也见证了世界电影，特别是中国和美国电影的发展。这20年，全球的电影，特别是中国电影，从最低谷走向最辉煌。 也有到现在面临的一些困境，所以我记得那时候，大概在6、7年前，我还是中影股份总经理的时候，那时候票房和市场大概是最好的时候，我一直就说要居安思危，这是中国人的一句话，不要以为电影很好了，电影的 日子很难说，因为我们的前辈曾经见识过，就是上个世纪60、70年代曾经电影最好的时候，我们也曾经有过90年代初中国电影最差的时候。所以爬坡的时候总不要忘了还有下坡的时候。今天我们就可能面临的这么样的一个情况，那么怎么样去应对？ 那么可能我觉得中美电影人应该携起手来。我曾经长期的分管这个进出口电影，就是中国电影这一摊子的进出口这个。我在电影局当副局长的时候，我也管过这个进口影片的就是引进。在中影集团当副总经理的时候，就专门负责进口这个美国电影和其他全世界的电影。我记得 在08、09、10年和11年期间，就那是我当中影集团副总经理的时候，曾经引进了像2012啊，阿凡达呀，包括像国王的演讲等等影片。这些影片有的非常棒的票房，但有的票房一般。这一般的电影恰恰可能是艺术性很强的，类似像 国王的演讲这样的电影，但是我觉得中影的眼光还是不错的，不论是《阿凡达》还是《国王的演讲》，我们都引进了。我觉得就是电影是面对着各方面的观众的，不一定就是你只是为了票房去引进电影，而是应该让电影的交流，让全世界都知道，电影是商品也是艺术，要让不同阶层的人能够得到一种共同的审美和欣赏。 所以我在担任中影股份总经理期间，除了引进美国电影和世界其他的电影，我们曾经也跟美国的公司合作电影，比如说《速8》，对吧？《速度与激情8》，我们当时就不是引进，是联合创意拍摄，到联合出品，其实可能共同打造，效果可能会更好一些，啊，这个我想听听大家的高论。 不占用大家过多的时间。
I think that the state of the current industry in China is that it is evolving as quickly as I would like our market to evolve. We were talking earlier about these micro dramas that are very popular in China now. And it's interesting to note that just a few years ago, we tried that in the United States. And we did it, as Rob would say, bigger and better, but it was not faster and cheaper. They've been doing it faster and cheaper. And because of that, it's been a huge success in China. And I think we can learn from each other. Special effects-driven movies are huge right now, and they've been hugely expensive to make. But in the process of getting caught up into what you might call every movie having a swirling apocalypse of doom, you know, and huge things falling all over, the story gets lost. And so what happens is that there are movies that are driven by the special effects department and not by the producers and writers. And I think as AI makes these things cheaper, and we combine good storytelling with good effects, we'll see some pretty amazing things in the future. And I expect China to adapt to that very quickly.
Thank you. Nelson?
大家下午好，非常高兴来参加这样一个论坛。我是中国电影评论学会会长饶曙光。一辈子搞电影，看电影、评论电影和组织电影的相关活动，我都不能想象，如果没有了电影，我还能干什么？所以电影就是我生命的一部分。那么这次我到美国来，也是希望认识更多的电影批评方面的同行，电影学术研究的同行，更好的来促进两个国家的电影交流。我想我们中国的电影评论家可以更好的来推荐美国电影，同时也希望美国的影评家来更好的介绍中国电影，以电影评论的方式、电影学术研究的方式来促进中美两国电影的交流。当前电影面临着一个新的危机，但是我个人相信电影的前途仍然是乐观的。我相信新的技术将给我们带来更多的创意力和想象力，像人工智能可以帮助我们完成那些机械性的劳动，让我们的注意力聚集到创意和想象，让我们的电影创意更有表现力，让我们的电影表达更富有人文内涵。这样的话，我们还会赢得更多的观众，我们还会创造电影一个辉煌的未来。谢谢大家，也谢谢电影。
Hi, I'm Richard Anderson, and Rob, in the last panel, Rob talked about how Hollywood periodically has these sort of restarts and everybody goes in a different direction. I got my career started in the early 70s. I used to do post-production sound on movies, and that's when Dolby came in and all these processes where you have speakers all around the theaters, and it was all new at the time, and Star Wars and all these movies depended a lot on the sound. And so that's how I got started in this business. But I always thought of myself as a filmmaker, not just the sound guy who does technical stuff. Creatively. So now I'm making, producing, writing, directing independent features, smaller budget things than a Star Wars movie. But I find them more interesting in a way. We've had so many superhero movies in about the last 10 years or 20 years, and I got to tell you, I'm so over superheroes. I want to see something different. I want to see real people who have maybe super abilities to figure something out or something like that, but not can fly and all that kind of thing. I think that co-production is a big question, okay? I did 2 films in co-production with China. They're smaller films, but the problem is, what is the subject matter of the movie going to be? That's where it seems to me it always gets stuck. You know, what movie will appeal to both Chinese people and Americans? You know, it's historical films are kind of iffy because a lot of people don't know Chinese history in America, and maybe the other way around. So we have to come up with something that both sides will like. You know, I talk to so many people, and they always want to make another version of Xi Ji. And I say, well, that's fine. You've had so many versions of Xi Ji. And I'm not sure what else I can bring to it, you know. And as an American, I didn't grow up with that story. We had The Wizard of Oz. But I just don't feel like I'm appropriate for that story. I think a Chinese director would be better. So you have to find the right project.
Thank you.
大家好，我的职业是演员，来自于上海。这个上海这座城市，电影对它意义非凡。我们提到上海，就会想到电影。就像我们提到洛杉矶，也会想到好莱坞一样。我刚才也听了大家谈了很多东西，谈到 AI， 谈到剧本内容，谈到技术，我觉得这都非常重要。这都是未来电影继续发展的，充满希望的一个潜力的东西。但是我觉得还有一个巨大的潜力，是不容忽视的。就是我今天在校园里转了转。我看了很多我们来自亚洲中国面孔的学生们，包括这次参加我们中美电影节苏先生举办的这样好的一个交流平台，我觉得这样的交流非常重要。我有2个孩子，最小的儿子只有15岁，他每次上海国际电影节是他集中看电影的时候，其实不像我想象的，他只看那些科幻大片。他甚至看我们一些修复的老片子，然后他也跟他妈妈积极沟通。他甚至12岁的时候，自己偷偷开始拍致敬惊声尖叫，在这个哔哩哔哩上去表达他对电影的这种东西。所以我觉得交流、电影节、中美电影节这样的平台，孕育着中国，孕育着中美电影。我觉得它的未来发展，特别看到这些学子们在好莱坞、在洛杉矶学电影的孩子们，还有将来上海也有很多这样的学生们，可能有更多的交流。像天歌导演，他正在做这样的事情，我觉得特别有意义。这也是我们未来的希望。要有人，要有未来，首先要有青年人热爱电影。谢谢各位。
谢谢你。
Hi, thank you. I'm Jason Squire. I'm Professor Emeritus at USC School of Cinematic Arts, and I had the honor of serving as a visiting professor in the management department at Beijing Film Academy. Also editor of the movie business book. The Mandarin edition was published late last year, happy to say. And I have pivoted to be the host of Movie Business Podcast. So it's wonderful to be together, and here in Los Angeles, being in a room with film lovers and filmmakers, it's the same vibe. And it's a warm and comfortable vibe because we're dealing with similar issues. We all speak the same language, the language of cinema. And all of the difficulties and challenges that we're aware of and that the esteemed panelists have discussed in detail across the board reflect the history of the business. Whenever a new technology came forward, everything was disrupted because it would never be the same. Television, right? Home video. First time in the 1970s watching movies at home, buying your own movies, collecting them. And then now we have streaming and the impact of the web. But what it means, although it is highly disruptive for all the distributors, what it means for the creators is this is more opportunity. There are more movies being made, large and feature length and short films. So that's more experience. And for the consumer, more choice. Many say in the English language streaming world, there are too many choices. How can you decide? Well, you know, it is a new industry and it hasn't sorted out quite yet. There hasn't been a friendly single interface that gives us our choices. Everybody is competing. But in the longer view, these challenges are similar to ones that we've all overcome in the past, and we'll do it again. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. 吴导演，
我是吴天歌，我来自上海电影集团，我同时也是上海戏剧学院的客座教授。我这次来美国是带了8位学生7部作品，来和美国的3所大学做学生之间的这个短片的交流和放映，分别在 AMU、LMU and Weber State and Columbia University。所以我们要去西部第1站、中部第2站、东部第3站。刚才 Morgan 的问题是讲到中美电影的交流跟工业的问题，那我就在想，事实上到了商业放映的阶段，这种交流其实很艰难，或者变得某种不可能，因为意识形态，因为工业形态，因为社会经济的不一样。但是这种交流存在于背后，存在于它的学术层面上，存在于他们准备的时候。所有的那些优秀的影片为什么具有国际视野？是因为他们具有，它具有那个国际上商业的成功，是因为他们具有国际视野。他们的国际视野是哪里来的？是在他们早年进行交流的时候。所以我非常注重，因为我现在自己在电影教育这里工作，电影教育包括电影，我们存在很多挑战。刚才饶曙光先生讲了，他坚信电影以后会一直发展下去，但是事实上我们有危机感，我们很惶恐，因为有各种各样不同形态的视频内容的形式在冲击长视频内容。所以我们要面对这种挑战，但是我们又可以看到什么呢？看到还有那么多的学生，不管是中国的还是美国的，他们依旧选择这个专业，说明什么？说明他们对这个东西仍旧感兴趣，就是电影。那么我们要做的是什么？我们要做的就不能把我们自己了解的传统的那些去讲给他们听，我们要让他们看到，要让他们有一个国际的一个视野，让他们去看全世界的东西是怎样发展的。这样，在他们年轻的时候会有这样的交流。在这个层面上，我认为中美之间的交流，中国和各个国家的交流都是有可能的，而且是最积极的、最活跃的时候。当他们形成了这种国际视野以后，才会形成他们各自的商业电影和工业层面上意义的电影。然后我们再相会在电影节上，电影节不就是在干这个的吗？让那些成功的电影和全世界见面。感谢司元涛，谢谢。
刚才我师弟吴天歌说的话，让我倒是想起了一桩事情。我记得93年我们搞第1届上海国际电影节的时候，发起人和创始人就是天歌的父亲，我的师父吴贻弓大师。当时全世界的电影都不景气，中国电影很不景气。我记得韩国电影那年一共拍了3部电影，拿了2部电影到中国来参加电影节。日本的电影导演大岛渚在10月14号晚上游艇观光浦江的时候就说电影真快死了。吴贻弓导演说了一句话，说我们都会死，但电影不会死。这是我记得很清楚的一句话。其实在电影最不景气的时候，当年吴贻弓导演创办上海国际电影节，就是要提供一个平台，让中国电影人和世界电影人进行交流。而在中国电影在那个年代似乎是最不景气的时候，恰恰是上海电影，比如说中国电影出了很多片子的时候，上海那时候出的《活着》《 北京那时候出的《霸王别姬》，都是在93年、94年、95年那个一段时间之内。尽管那时候电影票房很不好，全中国的电影票房加起来，没有1亿这个美金。那时候电影票房最惨的时候是6亿多人民币、7亿多人民币。99年的时候拼了命去给他凑，也凑不齐10亿人民币。而在那个时候，吴贻弓先生就是说的：我们都会死的，都会老去，但电影不会死，电影不会老去。我还记得，到了19年6月，也是上海电影节的时候，我去看望吴贻弓导演。他已经很消瘦，他在医院里，他看到我们电影特别好，看到现在电影形势也很好，然后他就说：你们不要以为现在电影好，各种危机都在旁边，早晚要进入低谷，但是我们都会死，电影不会死。所以吴贻弓导演才说：电影万岁！我相信电影万岁。
I think that as we evolve, the best thing that we can keep in mind is what works best creatively. The streaming services have exploded. There's been so much material produced that I find myself looking at these programs and saying, you have 10 episodes, 10 hours to tell a 90-minute story. And what they do then is there's a lot of filler in between, and you end up with a lot of writers and producers and directors being employed, but they haven't been compelled to make the work really good, to make it interesting, to keep the audience interested constantly. And if you can't do that, you can't do stories that are going to work long term. So what happens is you get these new streaming platforms and other platforms set up, and it gravitates toward mediocre material the more you produce. And we need to teach people to be more creative and to think like an audience. Sit there and say, okay, the experience of working on a show is very much like a bubble. You get to know the actors very well, and you think, oh, I've given them their moment and that person their moment. And you're not thinking, what is the audience responding to? And I think so long as we appeal to the audience, and if we put ourselves in the shoes of the audience, we will continue to do good work and will evolve.
确实，电影现在正在发生结构性的变化。要让观众走进电影院是一件非常难的事情。这其实对我们电影的作品质量就提出了更高的要求。我们一直在讨论科技赋能电影。我们在经历过一段时期的探索以后，我们会运用新的科技来创造出更好的电影作品，来更有效地吸引观众和感染观众。另外，我个人对中美两国电影的交流与合作也持乐观的态度。中国的观众，包括很多年轻的观众，也都是很喜欢看美国电影，但是需要我们加大推荐的力度。我们除开商业宣传之外，就是我刚才强调的，我们通过电影评论、电影学术交流的方式，让更多的中国人来了解美国电影。同时，我们在这样一个交流当中，也可以学到美国电影的一些先进的经验，包括美国电影在面临新的挑战的时候，与融媒体的这样的一个结合。那么我相信，我们未来电影的发展空间，并不是取决于技术，而是取决于我们的应变能力，我们的想象力。我们一定会创造电影更美好的未来，创造中美电影交流与合作更美好的未来。
谢谢。
You know, technology, like I said, was always changing. I remember when home video recorders first came in and all the studios went, oh my God, we're going to go out of business because everybody will just record our stuff and then they'll have it and they won't want to watch new stuff. So they were actually trying to have court cases against the people that, like Sony, that made these video recorders to block them from selling them. But within a few years, they realized that this actually was a great market because they could sell videotapes. And then later, when DVDs came in, they could sell DVDs. Rob, like I said, was here before. He was the director on, one of the directors on Lion King, and I worked on that movie with him too. I did the sound on it. But at the time, it made a lot of money in theaters. But interestingly, when it came out on home video, the first week, I think, it made more money or the same amount of money as its entire theatrical run selling DVDs. So Disney made a huge amount of money with this new technology. And I think that's what's going to happen. It just takes a couple years for us all to figure out how to use this new technology so we can take advantage of it. But we all maybe have to adapt. If we're going to make mini films for iPhones, then you can't make a movie like Lawrence of Arabia, which I did a restoration on. And that film, David Lean, they shot it in 70 millimeter film. It was on a big, big screen. And so he had these vast shots of the desert, and you'd see like a little tiny camel moving or something. But on a big screen, it worked. Now, if you take that shot and put it on your iPhone, you can't see the camel. All you see is some sand. So you have to make your movies to fit whatever the format is. And so if everybody's going to watch movies on iPhones, which I think is unfortunate personally, we have to figure out how to make them work better on iPhones.
Thank you. 我觉得听了大家很多的思考，特别感到这个开心。但是我有一句话说，就是我觉得电影不会死的，电影永远不会死的。当然，我们去思考，让电影变得更好。我觉得我们电影人就像是背上行囊的旅行者，总会在旅行当中发现一些问题，有的时候也会有惊喜，我受苏先生启发，我昨天跟他讲，我说我也喜欢这样的平台和交流。我觉得首先像苏先生这样的为电影做交流的人搭建平台的人致敬。然后呢，我也想在上海，我们可不可以为青年人也再搭建这样的一个平台，搭建这样的一个舞台？这些人不一定是像我们都是大电影公司的，他们是潜在的热爱电影的人。我昨天跟苏先生交流，我说我有这个想法。好，谢谢。
谢谢。谢谢。
I'd like to underscore what was said that some other panelists about film education, that the young people, which is a very challenging demographic today because they're always on their personal screens and not running to movie theaters unless the movie is animated. And I'm speaking of college-age students, but also the ages of, 15, 12, 9. They can't wait to get to start capturing on their personal phones. It's astounding. We have a whole new generation of very, very young filmmakers. They're experimenting with the form. They upload it. They send it to friends. They're on TikTok. They're on Instagram. They're all expressing themselves. The question is, how do you monetize that? But backing up to what Albert was saying, also it's important for these young creators to understand the form, understand the history, understand the technology, and be in environments with their colleagues, with their peers, so that they can enhance their own creativity and their own work. And I want to make another point about something that Bob said, because it's absolutely true, and it's a real concern. What's a good movie, all right? So I learned very early when I was a young executive at United Artists, don't laugh, Andre. 1970, long time ago.
Long, long ago and far, far away.
That's correct. That's right. So, what's a good movie? I ran into the office of the head of sales, Jim Velde, in New York. I said, well, young man, what did you see this weekend? Oh, I saw this movie. It's a great movie. And I had the grosses, which are on mimeograph. I shouldn't say that. Here they are. And he looks at it. It's not a great movie. It only grossed $115,000 in Manhattan. So I learned very quickly the difference between good meaning personal taste and good meaning dollars. And so it's important to turn to dollars. And the streamers are spending enormous dollars. They're cutting back a little, but in the last 4 or 5 years, 10 billion with a B, USD, every single year. Netflix especially, $17 billion with a B. Apple spending, in 1 year. It just dwarfs anything that a studio spends on movies. So this is serious, and it may be uncalled for, but it's a typical impulse in the movie business for the hungry outsiders who are the tech people to just throw money at the industry. Oh, this is easy. We have more money to spend. We have billions and billions of dollars to spend. But now we back up to the result. And we see a $175, $200 million cost movie called Wolves. Plural of wolf. Wolves. I don't know why it's called Wolves, but it has George Clooney and Brad Pitt. These are
That's
not.
because there's 2 of them. Wolves. Plural.
Oh, that's it. Thank you. You see, Andre knows. They are both on the screen. They are both expensive gentlemen. And the movie, in my opinion, if shown in theaters, would not be broadly accepted by the audience that needs to get out of the house and spend money and make a real effort to see a big screen movie. These are all the challenges. And we will never know how much money was lost on that particular movie. So I'm getting back to the difficulty of applying instinct and taste to screenplays, to packages, versus budgets. Combine it all and make a decision. And nobody knows. You just make it, it's all very scary, and you don't know until there's a result and there's a distribution deal and there's a return on the investment from any type of screen. And so that uncertainty about our great business will never change. It's also one of the exciting parts of the business. So let me make one point about AI, okay, if you don't mind, because there's been a lot of discussion about AI. And it's just a fabulous tool. AI will eventually replace CGI, and it will be much cheaper to shoot these fantasy or realistic sequences that otherwise were shot on distant location under horrible weather conditions, or CGI with 150 cameras circling the actors who have their little ping pong balls and wired up. This was and has been all the CGI work against green screen. Well, that will all fade eventually, and that's a very exciting prospect. And it really reduces cost. So that's a good example. A bad example might be putting all the readers out of work, because there are applications in AI where they'll simply read the screen. The machine will read the screenplay and be able to give a synopsis, which is the core of developing screenplays, right? Mm-hmm. And then a professional will read the 3-page version and either decide to read the material or not. And that puts a lot of entry-level people out of work. And that's really serious and sad. Thank you.
But if you put the entry people out of work, there will be nobody to succeed those retiring out of age.
They'll have
so
to
you
think
still
right.
need the entry to learn the business.
Right, or reconfigure the entry level. Make it more of a floating position where people go from department to department. Who knows? But yeah, AI, generative AI, real serious, but can be exciting.
We're about to run out of time, so I'm going to do the last one, which is to ask each of you if you had one thought or one piece of advice, in the case of China for Americans, and in the case of Americans for China, on how to quickly find common ways to collaborate to move forward through this troubled period, what would you recommend, what would you suggest as being that first path or the fastest path to start with? And to give some people time to think about it, I'm going to start at the other end. 吴天哥，你先回答。
I have a question for you, Andrew. Yes, for you.
I'm not on the panel, I'm the
Does the
moderator.
American box office lost money or earn money last year? Or this year?
Lost money or made money?
Yeah.
The truth is they lost money.
Yeah, same as the Chinese.
Okay.
Same as Chinese
This
box
is the
office.
usual sine curve of box office, the ebb and flow over 5 to 10 years.
But I think there's something that's a bit more profound, and I will take a minute because it's being alluded to. What is, and this is different between China and America, and it goes to the economics and capitalism versus the way the media sector is funded in China.
Because since last year is the first and this year is the second after the pandemic.
Yes, but there's a more fundamental thing. The pandemic for America was an inflection point for a fundamental shift in the way the average American consumer is taking their entertainment and paying for their entertainment. And so when we had 3 years with the cinemas closed, what happened was Americans became more programmed to subscribing to a Netflix or to an Amazon or to an Apple.
all these platforms.
And so what has happened with that is two things. One, the areas for recoupment of a film's negative cost have diminished because there was a very complicated waterfall that we had built over the last 30 years. I know as a pioneer, I helped build it. There was an order of recoupment. You put your money into making a movie, you took it to the theaters, you got a share of the ticket sales. Then you gave it to your cable operator for a first run. That gave you more money because the cable operator was collecting monthly fees. Then you gave it to the DVD company and they sold millions of DVDs and you got a share of that. Then you
right now
gave
in
it back
China-
to cable and they got another bite. And then you gave it to network television and they got another bite. And then you gave it to cable again, and then finally you gave it to syndication, by which time you were 11 to 12 years from the time the film was first shown. It was pretty hard in the long run to lose money on any film using this formula. It was so good that not only was America doing it, but Europe was doing it, Southeast Asia was doing it. Okay?
Well, in
Now,
China,
the problem is that system has collapsed. And this is what the Americans are referring to. That well-ordered system has totally imploded in the course of the 3 years of COVID and the inflection of all Americans now subscribing to at least one, and most American families subscribing to 2 or 3 services. So they're spending an average of $80, $90 a month getting Netflix, probably for $14. They're getting Disney Plus. They've also got access to Amazon Prime. And most of them have bought Apple, which gives them access, because of Apple, to all of the old streamers that they used to pay $10 to $15 per streamer. So that revenue stream has collapsed. And because we have another system which says everything all the time, not the Michelle Yeoh movie, but the concept that you can pay once and access everything anytime you want to see it for one price. So there are no subsequent revenue streams. So if you don't make it in the first round and you haven't pre-sold it, the chances are you're not going to break even. Europe and Southeast Asia are now following America, which is collapsing the international market, just as the American companies, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon, are going global. So the fundamental structure of how you finance movies, how you get them to the consumers, and how the consumers consume them and decide they like them, is in a total state of flux. But secondly, and equally important, this is what Yudong was talking about in the previous panel, because there was a 3-year hiatus in seeing cinema films, people got out of the habit of going to a cinema. And more importantly, a young generation grew up having never gone to a cinema. But at the same time, they were getting tons of entertainment on their cell phones. Not just all of the services I've mentioned, but the streamers that give you Instagram, that give you TikTok, and they give you a number of other Reels. There's a lot of different services. Not so dissimilar to what's going on in China, thanks to WeChat and the other services. The difference being, it doesn't appear that it's impacted on young people's desire to go to cinemas. In China, it's impacted on the word of mouth that comes out and how quickly a movie dies in China. In America, they don't even get to open because people make the decision up front. That movie's not worth seeing. I'll wait and buy it from Amazon.
But I think in the United States, the market, it's a really good a set of system that recycling. But not that happened in China. You know, they separately. The platform, the Tengxun, all the things that iQIYI, they separately. They do not cooperate with each other on one movie. So there is no long-distance economic happen in the film industry. That's the problem of Chinese industry. So it's completely different with it.
Upside
You know,
down.
yeah, upside down. So I focus on education, like you, Jason. So yeah, that's what my opinion is. That's
Focus
why I
on the
want to
movie.
ask you. That's why I want to ask you. I want all the Chinese audience to know, all the people here, to listen how is American running the system.
Destroying the system. We're burning it down. Who was it that said we have to burn the trees? They're all in flames right now.
But I think much better than China. That's why
I'm sure the trees are still growing in China.
Yes. Okay, so last question. How many percentage you lost money from box office last year?
To be honest with you, I don't know the percentage.
Let me
because
tell
we-
you, in China, we lost 25%.
25%, yeah.
25%. It's a huge number. So right now我算了，还是说中文吧。
说中文。
这是因为在中国，我们今年失去了25%的票房。为什么？是因为就是我认为就是我们的电影太单一了，有很多年龄层和不同爱好的人，他们看不到他们想看的电影。So we wanted to all the different ages, the audience to come into and back to the cinema. So we want to make different movie this year. So my first step is I want to make a movie for the senior person this year. Because you know what? The senior person become a very huge group in our country, especially in Shanghai. It's coming. The people who the age is over 60s is 34 something percentage in a city.
That's big.
That's big. That's huge. Because in Shanghai there's more than 20 million people over there. So it's a big number of the audience. It's the senior audience. So we make movie like that. We'll do it.
I just want to say I think it's sad if the theaters are to die because, I grew up watching movies in the theater and I found like I would go see a movie and it was the Pink Panther. I don't know, that popped into my mind. And it was the funniest movie ever. The whole audience was laughing. It was great. And because we all fed off each other's emotions. You know, humans are a social animal. And we feel each other's emotions. And when everybody's laughing, we find that we laugh too because it seems so funny. And then later you watch the same movie on television by yourself and you go, okay, yeah, oh, that's funny. Yeah. And the same thing for a scary movie, you know? If you think that, like, the guy's going towards the closet and you think the monster's in the closet, it's going to jump out, you can just feel the audience around you and everybody's like, no, don't open the door! You know, it's like that. But when you watch it at home, you're not as much reacting. And so movies are seen better in a theater,
Well, I think
regardless
it's
of
more
what they
than
are.
that. I think,
And I hate to lose that.
well, I think that you hit it on the head, which is something that doesn't get taught in film school. One of the few things, which is human beings are, by definition, very social people, very social animals. We like group activities. Those group activities reinforce our values, our sense of being a member of something, a society, a city, a country, a civilization. So when you go to the cinema and you laugh and everybody else is laughing, you kind of feel good because you're all getting the same joke. Or when you cry, or when you feel proud, or when you're scared, like Richard. At the end of the day, it builds a sense of community and it builds a sense of unity. I can't speak for China, but I can say in this country, perhaps the fact that we haven't been going to movies is contributing to the fractured nature of society here, because we're not all going out and having a good time seeing the movies together and laughing. I don't believe cinema will die in America, but I think it will be reduced quite significantly in terms of its importance to society and also the number of screens that are available. So anyway, hopefully this time next year we'll have better news and more positive things. I'd like a round of applause for all of our panelists. Thank you for your patience.